Welcome back to our series on Brahms's Opus 122 chorale preludes. And today we're looking at a very simple, very straightforward, but beautiful and effective chorale prelude on Schmücke, dich, liebe, Seele. When we were going through Bach's Orgelbüchlein, I mentioned this particular hymn in connection with the chorale on Jesu meine Freude. Not because they're in any way linked, but because they both include the words Jesu meine Freude, and they both are about joy, but not the kind of superficial jollity, but the deeper and more reflective kind of joy. So this is a very introspective hymn, which gets a very, very introspective chorale prelude. Bach, I think, wrote just one chorale prelude on this melody, and that's the great ornamented version in the so-called 18 Leipzig chorale preludes. When I refer back to Orgelbüchlein and to Bach, I'm not suggesting that the Brahms Opus 122 preludes are in any way similar in concept to Orgelbüchlein, which people occasionally say that they are. We talked about this a little bit in the episode on Es ist ein Rosensprungen, where I said that the concept of Brahms's chorale preludes is entirely different in that these are not liturgical pieces, they're not demonstrating the range of figuration, they're not didactic in their intent. These are pieces which reflect on and create art music out of the original chorale. I didn't mention also probably the most obvious difference with Orgelbüchlein, which was that Orgelbüchlein was encyclopedic, so Bach started by writing almost a whole hymn book's worth of titles on a page, and then set to work writing one setting of each. Brahms doesn't do that. Brahms has just picked out ones which he particularly wanted to compose on, and has written two of each of two of them. So there are very, very many differences in design, conceptual differences between the Brahms and the Bach. But nonetheless, I find myself referring back to Orgelbüchlein, partly because we've only just finished it and it's still on there, very much in my mind. So on to performance issues for this particular piece. Brahms doesn't write any performance directions other than P and Dolce, but none are really needed either. This is probably the most straightforward piece, and therefore this is going to be the shortest episode, I think, in the set. How we interpret P is another question. Mendelssohn translates P as a couple of quiet 8-foot stops, and that functions very well for this particular piece. On the other hand, Brahms doesn't write very clearly defined dynamics at any point during the chorale preludes. He sticks by and large to F and P, with a single MF and a couple of PPs, which are just particular special echo effects. So P can also include, for example, 8 and 4-foot flutes, if that's what you prefer for this piece. Really, anything which is gentle and quiet is going to do. So you have good scope for registration. The tempo just wants to maintain a steady flow. This actually is a really good piece to use as a study for playing semiquavers which don't sound rushed. So to get the semiquavers to move like a channel of water that just trickles by and doesn't sound hurried. But calling it a study doesn't suggest that this is not great music as well, because it is a very beautiful piece. The chorale melody is entirely undecorated across the top, and as usual we need to be a little bit careful to define the ends of the lines of the melody, but that is very straightforward, and in, I think, almost every case here, leaving one quaver's rest is ideal. So, in other words, turning the minim into a dotted crotchet and a quaver rest. I've mentioned before that it's always a good idea to decide in advance and, if necessary, write into the score exactly where you're going to lift the chorale melody, because it gives you one less thing to think about when you're actually doing it, and guarantees that the chorale melody is going to be very clearly portrayed.